Hello, welcome to Story Starters. I'm Miss Kayla, the children's librarian at the Dubuque County Library. So every week I get on to read the first couple chapters of a different book. Consider it book tasting, if you will. So in October, I've got a couple spooky or scary books to sample. So the one I have with me today is called Zombie or Not to Be by Kyle Sullivan. You can settle in at home as I read the first couple chapters, and I hope you enjoy it. Prologue: The Rotten State of Denmark. Once upon a time, something was rotten in the state of Denmark. But of course there was. Denmark was filled with the zombies, like me. But we zombies didn't start there. Our story began in another country called Norway, just across the undead sea. As far as zombie origin stories go, it was pretty standard stuff. The Norwegians didn't listen to their scientists. They destroyed their natural resources, they burned fossil fuels, and they polluted like there was no tomorrow. One thing led to another until, bam! The climate went berserk, pollution and smog blocked out the moon and sun, and the tides went completely out of whack. Natural disasters became an everyday thing, and viruses spread like, well, viruses. Luckily for me, one of those viruses was a zombie virus. It causes corpses to rise out of their graves and stalk through the streets on their hunt for brains. And for a while, the zombies loved their living deaths in Norway. In the beginning, they indulged in a seemingly limitless supply of juicy brains, while basking in a toxic and pleasantly spooky scenery that any zombie would love. But the humans kept polluting, the chaotic weather worsened, and the disease-filled air got so bad that even zombies grew sick. For zombies, it got scary in Norway, and not in a good way. They became concerned for their future. They began to think about beyond their next meal. On one hand, zombies existed because of climate change, while on the other hand, climate change put zombie existence in danger. What can I say? Death is complicated. Either way, zombies knew Norway was no place to raise their next generation. So just over 100 years ago, they moved across the undead sea to create a new, rational, science-positive society. They named it Denmark. Believe it or not, zombies are not the slack-jawed, moaning goons from the human movies. We're usually very level-headed and reasonable. It's true we love brains, but more than that, we love knowledge. We love democracy, social harmony, literature, and dramatic arts. Above all else, we love the scientific method. Denmark's founding zombies built these values into the supreme document of the land, the Reconstitution. Among other things, the document forbids drilling for fossil fuels and requires a focus on renewable energy sources. Although Denmark was still affected by human-caused climate change, zombies now had the chance to make things better through science-based solutions. Their goal was to create an ideal society. Well, more ideal than Norway, at least. To help guide the zombie society, the Reconstitution calls for an elected leader, known as the lead scientist, to work with a council of 7 democratically elected zombies. Together, the lead scientist and the elected council make laws that follow the Reconstitution and, in theory, benefit all of Denmark. But even with noble ideals and a democratic system, zombies still need to eat. To feed Denmark, zombie brain hunters started sailing to Norway, harvesting delicious brains, and shipping them back by the boatload. And despite our best attempts to harvest sustainably, humans didn't like being zombie food. Sometimes they fought back. So the founding zombies built a fortress on the north-facing shore To protect Denmark from human attacks, they named it Zomberg Castle. Making it as uninviting as possible, they formed it from stone and human bones and constructed a colossal human skull, front and center. Above the skull is a large clock, erected to remind the Norwegians that their time would soon be up if they didn't stop destroying the environment. Zomberg Castle is not only a major zombie landmark and historic site, it's also where I happen to grow up. The Reconstitution states that the lead scientist must live in Zomberg Castle, and for many years, my mom served as the lead scientist of Denmark. But here's where things really get weird. A few weeks ago, completely out of nowhere, my mom disappeared. When I got the news, I was in class at my boarding school, Wittenberg University Prep, in the country of Germany. It was the second to last day of school before summer break. My Germanic languages teacher, Miss Blutsauger, handed me a note. I read it, gasped, and jumped on the first train back to Denmark. My death has been a mess ever since. After arriving home to panic, I learned that things were even worse than I had imagined. In my mom's absence, the elected council made the head-spinning decision to nominate my Aunt Agonista, the richest zombie in Denmark, as their new lead scientist. Admittedly, the Reconstitution doesn't provide a word of guidance for replacing a missing lead scientist, but still, the elected council's decision-making couldn't be worse. Up until her nomination, Agonista's only experience with the government was running a wide variety of businesses that had the habit of breaking Denmark's environmental laws. The elected council claimed it would be good to have a fresh perspective of a successful business zombie to guide Denmark, but I didn't buy it for 1 second. Not this business zombie. Agonista is the complete opposite of my mom. While most zombies still believe in Denmark's founding ideals, some have staggered away from science. Some have moved toward a more destructive, money-driven, and Norwegian way of being. Agonista is one of those. And here I am, a 12-year-old zombie student with a missing mom, a climate going haywire, and a new anti-science lead scientist in charge of Denmark. These days, things in my world feel a bit topsy-turvy, to say the least. Recent events have led me to question everything. Family, zombiehood, science, the very nature of existence. My mind is all mixed up and frantic. And without my mom, I'm not sure what to do or who to turn to. Being a zombie kid is hard enough as it is, but this is all too much. My name is Etta. This is my story. It's the story of a zombie with a lot on her brain. Chapter 1. A Sea of Troubles. "Who's there?" squeaked the vampire bat. "Is that Etta?" The wind screamed through my tangly white hair as I clung to the turbine's ladder. I was about 20 feet above Zomberg Castle's northern wall, with the castle towers and ramparts stretching out beneath me. It was bitterly cold even for a zombie. I carefully set my socket wrench down beside the turbine's turned-off motor. With one arm crooked through the ladder, I used my free hand to shield my bloodshot eyes from the wind as I squinted into the dark, angry sky. "Yes, Brum, it's me," I called out in a loud whisper. Despite the screeching gusts and the wind turbines whooshing furiously along the castle wall, I could hear my friend's frantic squeaking. But he was nowhere to be seen. Gray, ashy flakes swirled around me, clouding my vision. It was pollution blowing in from Norway's factories across the undead sea. It was as if the skies themselves were flaking apart, kind of like my reality. Suddenly, Brom rode in on a gust of wind and popped up right in front of my face. "Hey, Anna!" he squeaked, flapping wildly. "I assumed it was you, but you know how terrible I am with the whole echolocation thing. I'll just meet you down on the rampart." The strong winds would have made things difficult enough, but the smartphone Brom clutched in his little bat feet made it almost impossible for him to fly at all. "I'll be right down," I whispered as loud as I dared so that Brom could hear me over the wind, but not so loud that I could be heard by the zombies partying in the courtyard below the castle wall. After tightening one last bolt, I carefully replaced the turbine's casing. I returned my socket wrench to my tool belt and wiped my hands one at a time on the sleeves of my worn-out black and gray flannel. Lately, I had taken to wearing black clothes to mourn my missing mom and to protest the elected council's decision to make my aunt, Agonista, the lead scientist. After my mom disappeared, they barely searched for her at all before replacing her with my aunt. It all seems a little too hasty, if you ask me. With a sigh, I switched the turbine on. Immediately, the blades began spinning violently in the gale-force winds, causing the entire turbine tower to wobble. It felt good to accomplish something, however small, even though it probably made no difference. And really, can I make a difference? I've been racking my brain for an answer. Do my actions matter at all? Or is everything on a fixed crash course that's out of my control? Before things got scrambled up, I didn't really ask questions like this. I always had two pillars to rely on when troubles arose: my mom and science. Now my mom was gone, and there was nothing science could do to make her reappear. With these thoughts clanging around in my head and with slow and cautious steps, I made my way down the ladder to the castle wall below. After a few rungs, a particularly powerful blast of wind stopped me cold. As I held on tight and waited for the wind to change direction, I looked out to the north, over the toxic, churning waves of the undead sea. Green vapors wisped off the black water as jagged, white-capped spikes rose and fell. Powerful swells gathered and slammed into the castle wall, made of gray stone and human bones. Some of the waves had enough momentum to splash up and onto the rampart wall, a good 40 feet above sea level. It felt like the waves were trying to break through and wash my whole world out to sea. The powerful gust moved on, and after a deep breath, so did I. The turbine I clung to was just west of the enormous ignore wave facing Skull and the clock at the front of Zomberg Castle. I could hear the pendulums swinging inside each of the Skull's cavernous eyes. With perfectly timed clanks, they marked the seconds that were ticking away. Beyond its symbolism, the castle clock was also useful. Only moments ago, its glum chimes let me know it was 1:45. Without the pollution-blocked moon and sun to guide us, clocks were the only way to track the time. As I made my way down, I could hear trumpet blasts, drum beats, hoots, whoops, and hollers coming from the courtyard below the castle wall. Most zombies were curled up in their graves at this time of day, but by the sound of it, this party was not slowing down or shutting up anytime soon. I looked down in fury at the gleeful elected council. They were celebrating their decision to make Agonista the lead scientist by guzzling glasses of bubbly brain fluid and nibbling fancy brain appetizers on little toothpicks. As if absolutely nothing was wrong, they munched cheerfully away on intestine-wrapped brainstem bites, lobe loaf, cerebellum tartlets, and pickled brain clusters. A disturbing thought crossed my mind as I watched these misguided zombies in their brain banquet. Were they eating leftovers originally intended for my mom's unsuccessful search party? My thought was interrupted by Agonista's witchy cackle rising up with the wind from the courtyard. With a primal growl, I stopped on the ladder to glare at her, tall and lanky as a skeleton. She was talking with a council member and flailing her wispy limbs to make her point. You might think someone as rich as Agonista would have a sophisticated sense of style, but you'd be wrong. Instead, she wore a black turtleneck and round sunglasses, despite the lack of sunlight. Jutting out to the side of her puffy white hairdo was a large, metallic, very tacky, wireless earpiece for her smartphone. It was surreal to think of this zombie in charge of Denmark. While owning businesses isn't a bad thing on its own, Agonista has always skirted the rules and environmental laws established for the greater good. Her ambition and greed made her the richest zombie in Denmark, but at what cost to the rest of us? I couldn't prove that she had evil intentions as lead scientist, but my hunch was big enough to qualify me as a mad scientist's assistant. Looming at Agonista's side were Denmark's fiercest brain hunters, Squeak and Gibber. Apparently, Agonista had drafted them into some kind of security role. Squeak was very small and rode in a harness that Gibber, a remarkably tall and lumbering zombie, wore on his back. They wore spiky armor and grungy black camouflage to help them blend in with Norway's polluted environment when they were on the hunt. An arsenal of brain-hunting tools hung from a strap across Gibber's chest, including hammers, hooks, bone saws, and ice cream scoops. Their eyes darted around as if on the lookout for intruders. Luckily, they didn't think to look up here. Resuming my descent down the ladder, I kept my eyes on the grotesque scene below. There I was, stuck between raging waters and a money-grubbing ant. A sea of troubles on both sides, I muttered to myself. I hopped down the ladder onto the castle wall, which was a few dozen feet above the courtyard party. Small, energy-efficient lights cast a silvery glow among the drifting pollution flakes. The stone wall was peppered with human skulls, femurs, and other bones. A zombie's idea of a classy architectural touch. Brom was there, waiting for me, leaning nervously against the stone and bone wall. He was back in his vampire form, with a shock of thick black hair crowning a dark green face. Along with a hoodie, he wore a backpack and puffy pants, featuring a pattern of neon-colored bats. And as always, he wore a pair of fun, colorful sneakers. Brom's sneaker collection was an object of fascination for me, because zombies don't wear shoes at all. Zombie feet require a certain amount of ventilation that shoes and socks just don't allow. It's 11:53, Brom said. He held his phone away from his body as if it were a wooden stake. That means this illusion, whatever it is, will call in 7 minutes. Brom and I were here because of a phone call. Well, a video call. Something, had been waking Brom up with a video call at noon sharp the past 2 days. Just as he got a glimpse of the creature, the call would cut out. And the weirdest part, he said the thing resembled a strange version of my mom. Hopefully your reception is better up here than it is in the Glob Theater, I said. The Glob Theater is where we've been crashing. When I returned from Gormany, I discovered that Agonista had taken over not only my mom's grave room in the castle's northeast sector, but mine as well. I found my things jumbled inside a crate at the bottom of the steps that led up to my old room. Agonista didn't even give me a reason for kicking me out of the castle. But as lead scientist, I guess she didn't have to. With my school on summer break and my grave room stolen from me, I had nowhere to stay. So I've been sleeping in the Glob's wardrobe room, where my friend Rick runs the show. Brum has been sleeping in the Glob's attic. At least up here, we'll be able to see if anyone creeps up on us, I said, glancing in both directions along the empty castle wall. It could be paranoia, but I had the uneasy feeling that Agonista had been watching me lately. That's why Brom and I avoided detection by taking separate routes. This is really weird and scary, but it's kind of fun, right? Brom asked as he propped his phone on the rampart ledge between us. He forced out an unconvincing chuckle, his fangs glinting faintly in the lights. I mean, how often do you get a phantom phone call? Even though I wouldn't characterize this as fun exactly, it felt a lot better with Brom around. He's such a calm, stable friend. He could be spending his summer break anywhere, Gormany, Franck, Fangland, but he decided to stay here and hang out with me. I met Brom on my first day of class at Wittenberg University Prep. We became instant friends. Brom grew up in Gormany, a country of mostly vampires, so he showed me the ropes and helped me adapt to the vampire's social and cultural way of death. In Gormany, Brom would never be outside at this time of day, since sunlight turns vampires into stone. In Denmark, however, he was safe from the sun because the pollution billowing in from Mid-Norway completely blocked it out. What are you doing up there anyway? What were you doing up there anyway? Brom asked, pointing up to the turbine. The tool belt was supposed to be an excuse for me being up there, I explained. If anyone asked, I was going to tell them I was fixing a wind turbine. Then, when I got here, one of the turbines was actually broken, so I fixed it. We both looked up at the rapidly spinning blades. Zomberg Castle's renewable energy technology has been falling apart lately, I said. First the hydroelectric generator, then the bone compost biofuel converter, and now the wind turbine. Glaring down at Agonista, I wish I could shoot fireballs out of my eyes. I can't help but blame her, I said. Agonista was telling a story to a few of the elected council zombies. She wore a smile that nearly cracked her face in two. She smiles and smiles, I sneered. I know she's a villain. Etta, you're gnashing your teeth, said Brom, his face beaming sympathy. Brom and I waited as pollution flakes swirled around our heads. Poisoned waves crashed into the castle wall, and the party banged and clattered below. I really hope this isn't some silly daymare brought on by a scary Slayer movie I watch sometimes, Brom said. Even when I see it, I can't believe it. The calls are so choppy, and my screen is really cracked. But it does look a little like your mom. Once, I even thought I heard it say your name, but the reception cut out before I could ask it questions. I don't actually own a phone, so if this thing is trying to reach me, it has no way to call me directly. I have pretty strong feelings about so-called smartphones. I've seen zombies walking around the streets of Denmark, mouths agape, staring at their devices like mindless humans. Not my style. Brom put his hand on my shoulder. Anna, you're gnashing again. Sorry, I said. The way things were headed, I was going to grind my teeth into dust by the end of this week. No, it's 11:58, said Brom. Trembling slightly, he grabbed his phone and held it closer, so we both could see the screen. Are you ready for this? Yes, I said. I reached out my hand to help him steady the phone. I'm ready. Eyes and mouths open wide, we stared at the phone's cracked screen. Brom had dropped it countless times, both as a vampire and as a bat. Breathless, we watched the phone's digital clock flip to 11:59. For the next 60 seconds, we didn't dare blink. The wind howled around us. At the precise moment Brom's phone showed 12 o'clock, Zolnberg Castle's clock boomed across the furious sea. Bong, 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 bong. Then at once, before the 12th tone had faded away, we both recoiled in fear when a death metal guitar riff blared from the phone. It was Brahms' ringtone. He hastily silenced it as the words "unknown number" crawled across the screen. Brahm looked at me, fanged mouth open in awe. I took a breath and nodded. With an unsteady finger, he touched his screen to answer the call. An image struggled to materialize behind the cracked surface. The video connection popped and fizzled. What we saw came through weak and glitchy, but what we saw was unmistakable. My mind burst with horror. It looked like my mom, and it looked human. I'm going to stop there. That was the prologue and the first chapter of our book for today, which was Zombie or Not to Be by Kyle Sullivan. If you'd like to find out what happens for the rest of the story, drop on by the Dubuque County Library and check it out. Thank you so much for joining me today. Bye.